"Don't come back here if you can't pay." The words cracked through the store like a whip, cold, sharp, unforgiving. A supervisor near the front register had spoken them aloud with no hesitation, his voice slicing through the warm hum of the morning rush. The man standing on the other side of the counter didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice, didn't plead his case. He simply stood still, wearing a worn-out brown jacket, head lowered as if the weight of that one sentence had added another stone to the burden already on his back. His hands, rough and trembling, held only two items, a small loaf of bread and a pint of milk. Then something unexpected happened. "I'll cover it," came a voice, quiet but steady, like a thread holding a fraying scene together. It was Ryan, the cashier. "And if it happens again, I'll still cover it." There was no hesitation in his tone, no guilt-ridden glance over his shoulder. Just quiet resolve. Just humanity. A man stacking shelves nearby froze in mid-motion. Nobody noticed him. He looked like another part-time employee lost in the blur of a busy shift. But he wasn't. That man was Jackson Miller, the founder and CEO of the company, hiding in plain sight. Undercover. And within the next 72 hours, someone would lose their job. Someone else would find their life changed forever, and the entire soul of the company would be cracked open for all to see. 20 years ago, Jackson had started Evans Mart with little more than grit, a rusted register and a handwritten sign taped to a glass door in a quiet Ohio neighborhood. One man, one vision, to create a store where people mattered more than price tags. Now, that store had multiplied into over 70 locations across the country, hundreds of employees, thousands of transactions each day. The profits were healthy, the metrics impressive, but Jackson felt more distant from his company than ever before. Like a father who sees his child grown but no longer recognizes the heart that beats inside them. He asked himself, do they still care the way I cared when I started this? Have we traded our soul for efficiency? Reports didn't have the answers. Pie charts couldn't feel. Surveys didn't speak with honesty. So Jackson decided to go where the truth couldn't hide, in the ordinary rhythms of an ordinary day. He traded in his clean-cut image for a scruffy beard and shadows under his eyes. Out went the pressed suits and polished shoes. In came second-hand jeans, a thrift store hoodie, a battered ball cap pulled low over his face. The name on his name tag said, Mike. He was just another new hire sent from corporate. On a quiet Monday morning, he stepped through the sliding doors of Store 3 in Dayton, Ohio. The place looked perfect on paper. High sales, low complaints, fast staff turnover. But Jackson wasn't there for spreadsheets anymore. He needed to feel the heartbeat of the floor. Inside, the air was filled with a cocktail of fresh brewed coffee, lemon-scented cleaner, and the soft static of a local radio station. Shoppers moved like clockwork, grabbing burritos, browsing energy drinks, mumbling about the lottery numbers. Behind the counter stood a sandy-haired young man who smiled at each face like it belonged to family. "Morning, Mr. Torres," he called out. "Hey, Lisa, how's that dog of yours holding up?" Jackson noticed it immediately. The energy, the sincerity. It wasn't rehearsed. It was real. This young man, Ryan, wasn't just running a register. He was holding space for people. A flicker of curiosity sparked in Jackson's chest, then a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He was greeted soon after by Joe, the store manager. Kind voice, steady presence, the sort of person who made people feel safe just by existing. Joe handed him a clipboard and said, "We're short on shelf stockers lately. Think you can help with breakfast goods?" "Perfect." Jackson spent the morning unpacking boxes of granola bars and juice cartons, quietly observing. From behind towers of cereal, he watched Ryan at the front, weaving kindness into every transaction like it was part of his job description. Hope your mom's feeling better. Let me know how those new allergy meds work out, okay? It wasn't performative. It wasn't flashy. It was human. Jackson waited, expecting the cracks to show. A slip in patience, an irritated sigh, something to prove it was all for show. But none came. Later that day, Jackson was near the front when he noticed the man in the old brown jacket. He walked with a weary shuffle, like his legs carried the weight of more than just his body. Years of fatigue, disappointment, and quiet battles. His hands trembled as he placed just 2 items on the counter. "Morning, Mr. Thompson," Ryan said softly, as though the man were a regular. As though he mattered. The older man gave a weak nod and reached into his coat pocket. His fingers fumbled with a few crumpled bills, then froze. "I thought I had," he began, his voice breaking not from volume but from quiet embarrassment. And then, those words. From a supervisor. "If you don't have enough money, don't come here again." They landed like a slap, loud enough to hush the entire front of the store. Customers stopped mid-step. A silence bloomed. But it was Ryan who stepped in. "I'll cover it," he said again, this time louder, then added, "and I'll cover it next time too." It was in that instant, as Jackson stood unseen just a few feet away, that something inside him shifted. Not a thought, not a decision, something deeper, something closer to truth. He had built a company, but somewhere along the way he had forgotten to keep building the soul behind it. In that moment, quiet and unassuming, was about to become the first domino in a chain that would shake the foundation of everything he thought he knew. "I'm short. I can put one of them back," Mr. Thompson whispered, voice barely audible, his hands trembling slightly as he looked down in quiet shame. Before he could decide which item to return, Ryan gently lifted a hand, calm, sure, and steady. "Don't worry about it," he said, voice soft but firm. "I've got you covered today." Jackson, still crouched behind a nearby shelf of granola bars, turned his head slowly, muscles stiffening. Mr. Thompson's eyes widened in alarm, his voice cracking. "Ryan, no. I told you not to do that again. I can't let you keep paying." Ryan leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only the older man could hear. "It's okay," he whispered. "I want to." There was a pause, a breath of silence suspended in the air. Then, with eyes glistening and voice barely a whisper, Mr. Thompson murmured, "Thank you," and walked out slowly, bag in hand, shoulders straighter than when he'd entered. Jackson stood frozen. He didn't move. His mind churned, flooded with questions. Why would a cashier use his own money? Was this part of some unofficial policy? Was someone else directing this? Or worse, was this an unregulated, unsupervised behavior hiding beneath the radar of corporate structure? He needed to know more. For the next hour, Jackson lingered near the register under the guise of stocking shelves. At first it was subtle, but then curiosity eclipsed routine. He stopped pretending and just watched. That's when he saw it again. A woman, maybe mid-30s, approached with a few containers of baby formula and snacks. Her posture was tense. She smiled politely, but kept glancing down at her wallet. When her card declined, Jackson noticed her shoulders stiffen. She tried again, still declined. Her cheeks flushed red as she fumbled for cash. Ryan didn't flinch. He didn't ask for a manager or make a scene. Instead, he leaned over, tapped a code into the machine, and smoothly slid his own card through. "It worked. You're good to go," he said with a warm smile. She didn't even realize what he'd done. She just smiled back, relieved, and walked away. A few minutes later, a young man in a grease-stained fast food uniform approached. He laid out a handful of coins, counting under his breath. Ryan surveyed the pile, then discreetly slipped $1 from his own wallet into the drawer and handed the customer his change, like nothing unusual had occurred. Jackson started keeping track. 3 acts of compassion in under 2 hours. None of them loud, none of them forced. Just natural. Each time, the person left looking just a little lighter, a little more seen. And slowly the question Jackson had arrived with, "Do my people still care?" began to shift. Because here was someone who didn't just care, he carried people. But now, a new question began to surface. Who is this kid? This young man who treated strangers like siblings, who gave quietly from a wallet that likely wasn't overflowing, who never once asked for recognition or praise. As a CEO, Jackson felt a ripple of concern. Technically, what Ryan was doing could be interpreted as breaking policy. Using personal funds at the register could easily be misread as fraud or manipulation. But as a human being, as the man who once handed out free sandwiches during snowstorms in a store that barely broke even, Jackson felt something else. He felt awe and a rising sense of responsibility. He had to know more. At the end of the shift, Jackson followed the employees to the back room. Ryan had removed his apron and was folding it carefully, like it was something sacred. He sat sipping water in silence, the stillness of someone who carried much but never complained. Jackson approached casually. "Still Mike, still the temp." "Hey," he said, keeping his tone easy. "I noticed what you did out there." The older man, the lady with the formula. Ryan blinked. No defensiveness, no bravado, just a quiet nod. "Yeah," he replied. "Some folks are struggling. If I can help, why shouldn't I?" No drama, no need for applause, just truth. Jackson didn't reply. He didn't have to. Inside, something deep had cracked open. Who takes care of the one always taking care? He wondered. And more urgently, how had the system missed him for so long? The next morning, Jackson arrived even earlier. He didn't meet with the manager. He didn't review the books. He simply positioned himself near the front, stocking shelves, watching. Ryan was already there, humming as he refilled the cooler. No audience, no pressure. Still smiling. That confirmed it. This wasn't performance. This was identity. Around 8:15, a woman walked in with her hair tied up, a baby carrier strapped across her chest. She looked exhausted, like sleep was a distant memory. She picked up a few jars of baby food and a small pack of diapers, clutching her wallet with silent worry. When her card declined, she fumbled for cash. Just a few bills, some change. "I can put something back," she said, flustered. Ryan didn't blink. He tapped a few buttons, reached into his own wallet, and with a seamless motion, paid for it. "You're all set," he smiled. "Hope your little one sleeps well tonight." She didn't even realize he had paid. Jackson, still crouched by the shelf, exhaled. This was no one-time gesture. This was a way of life. Minutes later, an elderly man limped in with a single cup of instant noodles. Ryan greeted him like an old friend. "How's the leg, Mr. Green?" "Still attached," the man grinned, "thanks to duct tape and strong coffee." They laughed. Ryan bagged the noodles with care. "Coffee's on the house today," he said with a wink. "You sure?" "Positive." Jackson leaned against the shelf. There it was again, that subtle warmth no training manual could ever replicate. As the day went on, Jackson watched Ryan help a woman find cereal, not by pointing, but by walking beside her. He picked up a receipt someone dropped, helped restock between customers, greeted the delivery driver by name. Everything he did, everything, felt intentional, human, connected. And customers responded. They lingered. They smiled more. The store didn't just function, it felt alive. Jackson remembered a snowy day in 2007. A mother with 3 soaked kids trying to buy soup. Her card declined. He covered it, no questions asked. Back then, it wasn't about rules, it was about people. And now, it seemed, the heart of his original dream had found a new home, at Register 2. Later, in the break room, Jackson found Ryan sitting on a crate, eating a granola bar. He sat beside him. "You always been like this?" Ryan looked up, puzzled. "Like what?" "You know, helping people like it's your job?" Ryan shrugged. "Don't really think of it that way. I figure, if someone's drowning and you've got a rope, you throw it. Seems simple." Jackson looked at the wall for a long moment. Simple, direct, no pride, just a code quietly lived by. And Jackson knew he was only beginning to understand who this young man really was. The next day, he wouldn't just observe. He would ask the question that had been growing louder inside him. Why does someone with so little give so much? He was ready to find out. Ryan paused, then slowly set his burrito down. He wiped his hands on his jeans and looked up, not with a rehearsed answer, not with the guarded grin of someone dodging attention, but with the weight of a truth that had lived inside him for years. "My dad passed away when I was 16, he said plainly, his voice low but steady. Heart failure, no warning. We were laughing at dinner and then he just wasn't there anymore." Jackson didn't move. He just listened, the way a man listens when he senses something sacred is being shared. "It was just me and my little brother after that, Adam. He was 10, no life insurance, no savings, just a pile of bills and silence at the kitchen table." Ryan looked down at his calloused hands, palms that had known more work than comfort. "I dropped out of college to take care of us. Warehouse shifts, graveyard gas stations, grocery runs. I did whatever paid." There was no bitterness, just truth. Jackson waited a beat, then gently asked, "And now?" "Adam's in school." Ryan's eyes softened. A flicker of pride danced in the quiet. "Yeah, he's at Ohio State, full ride. Smart kid, way smarter than me." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Wants to be an engineer. I told him I'd cover anything the scholarship doesn't." Jackson raised an eyebrow, almost not believing it. "You're putting your whole paycheck into that?" Ryan gave a shrug that held the entire story of sacrifice in a single motion. "I live cheap, roommates, bus pass, no vacations. But Adam's got a shot at something better. That's all I've ever wanted." A silence settled between them, deep and reverent. Then Jackson leaned forward slightly, his voice lowered, his words more careful now. "And the people you help here, Mr. Thompson, that mom with the baby, why them?" Ryan didn't even blink. "Because I know what it's like to be $5 short and still have to smile. I know what it feels like to walk into a store praying your card won't decline. And I remember what it meant when someone, just one person, showed me kindness." Jackson felt something shift inside him. Not admiration, not guilt. Recognition. He had once lived that same belief. He had once been the kind of man who helped without a second thought. But somewhere along the way he had let balance sheets replace basic humanity. And here was Ryan, living proof that the soul of Evans Mart still flickered. Jackson swallowed hard. "Thanks for telling me," he said quietly. "I don't think a lot of people would." Ryan gave the smallest smile. "I don't talk about it much. Not because I'm hiding anything, it's just not the kind of story people ask to hear." Jackson stood slowly, his hand brushing the table. "Well, I'm glad I asked. Then he paused at the door. "If you ever need anything, ever, don't wait. Speak up." Ryan tilted his head with a light smirk. "Mike? You're just a temp. What can you do?" Jackson chuckled, a sound that held more meaning than words. "More than you think." And with that, he stepped back onto the sales floor. But he didn't walk out as the man who entered that morning. He walked out carrying something heavier, something richer. He hadn't just found a good employee. He had found a good man. A man holding up his world with no spotlight, no applause, and no backup. The next morning, Jackson came in early, earlier than Ryan, earlier than Joe. The store still smelled of floor polish and cardboard. The lights buzzed quietly above the empty aisles. But Jackson didn't head for the shelves this time. He went straight to the back. That's where he found Bill Travers. Mid-60s, white beard, steel-toed boots, a man of few words and strong presence. The kind of worker who, when he did speak, everyone leaned in. Jackson, still in character as Mike the temp, offered to help. They worked in silence, lifting crates, taping boxes, stacking water bottles. Then Jackson asked casually, "You've been here a while, huh?" Bill nodded. "Almost 10 years. Started back when we still had handwritten signs on the walls." That made Jackson smile. "Sounds familiar." He glanced at Bill. "What do you think of Ryan?" Bill stopped taping. He didn't hesitate. "That kid's one of the best we've got." Jackson kept his tone casual. "Yeah, seems like it." Bill leaned against a stack of soda cases. "It's more than that. Comes in early, stays late, picks up shifts when people call out, never complains." He paused, then looked over. "But the part most folks don't see. That's what really matters." Jackson tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Bill's voice dropped slightly. "He's been through hell. Lost his dad real young. Mom didn't stick around much longer. But he never broke, took care of his brother like a second father." He looked down. Adam wouldn't have made it out of high school without Ryan. Now he's in college. Smart one. Jackson listened, jaw tightening. Ryan worked 3 jobs at one point. Still never missed a shift here, Bill said. I told him to slow down. He just smiled and said, "1 more semester, then Adam's covered." Jackson stared at the floor, the weight of it sinking in. "What about time off?" he asked. Bill laughed. "Ryan doesn't take days off, not even when he's sick." He pointed to the corner of the stockroom. 2 months ago he passed out right there. Didn't tell anyone. Just sat up, drank some water, and kept unloading like nothing happened. Jackson felt a knot form in his chest. How many Ryans had the company overlooked? How many stories like his were buried beneath consistent, reliable, no complaints? He looked over at the timesheet. Ryan's name? 12 days in a row. No missed punches. Jackson snapped a photo. He didn't even know why. Maybe as proof, maybe as penance. When he looked up, Bill was watching him, quiet, knowing. "You're not just a temp, are you?" Jackson blinked. "I'm just asking questions." Bill smiled, like a man who already knew the answer. "I'm just glad someone finally is." Later that afternoon, Jackson stood behind a drink display, watching Ryan once more. Same calm voice, same steady pace. Customers smiled, kids waved. Ryan responded to each like they were old friends. No one would have guessed the weight he carried, but Jackson saw it now. He saw all of it. And he knew it was time. The store closed at 9:00 p.m. The last customer left. The door chimed once and settled. Lights dimmed, counters were wiped down, the night crew was clocking out. Then Jackson stepped forward, not as Mike the temp. He removed his hoodie, pulled off his cap. And for the first time in 3 days, everyone saw him. Joe squinted. "Wait, what?" Jackson raised a hand. "My name is Jackson Miller. I'm the founder and CEO of Evans Mart." Silence. A pen dropped somewhere near the break room. Someone whispered, "No way." Ryan stood frozen behind the register, eyes wide. "I've been here undercover for 3 days," Jackson continued. "I didn't tell anyone. I needed to see what the spreadsheets don't show." He turned toward the group. "I've done this before, years ago, but this time, it was different. It was personal." He looked at Ryan. "And what I found in you changed me." Ryan blinked, unsure what to say. Jackson stepped closer. "You didn't know who I was. You weren't trying to impress anyone. But I watched you help people. Quietly, generously, again and again. I saw you pay for groceries out of your own pocket. I saw how you treated people when no one was watching. And I remembered that this company was never meant to just be a business." Joe stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, Ryan's actions, while noble, don't follow policy." Jackson turned to him, voice calm but firm. "Joe, stop." Joe froze. "I don't need a policy handbook right now. I need honesty." He turned back to Ryan. "I know about your father, your brother, the hours you've worked. I know about the day you passed out in the back room and still finished your shift." Ryan looked down, eyes full, hands curled at his sides. "But here's what matters most," Jackson continued. "You've done all of this while lifting up everyone around you, and no one had to ask you to." A long pause. "Finally," Ryan whispered. "I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just didn't want people to feel invisible, because I know what that feels like." Jackson nodded. "That's exactly why it matters." Then he turned to the entire team. "We've spent years measuring performance in sales, efficiency, speed. But Ryan reminded me, the soul of this place doesn't live in spreadsheets." He pointed at the Evans Mart logo behind the register. "It lives in the people who wear that name with pride." "That's why," Jackson said, voice steady but rich with emotion. "Starting today, you're no longer just a cashier." The room froze. Not a breath, not a blink. "You're being promoted to assistant store manager, effective immediately." Ryan blinked hard, his lips parted slightly as if to speak, but no words came. He stood there, silent, overwhelmed, his heart racing in a way he hadn't felt in years. "And that's not all," Jackson continued. "I'll personally cover your brother's remaining college costs. Whatever the scholarship doesn't cover, Evans Mart will." Gasps fluttered across the room like wind through leaves. A wave of stunned murmurs filled the space. Ryan's eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. Instead, he let out a soft, shaky breath and offered a smile. Humble, stunned, deeply grateful. "Yes. I don't know what to say," he whispered. Jackson stepped forward and extended his hand. "Then don't. Just keep doing what you're doing." Ryan took his hand and shook it, firm, grounded, like a man ready to step into something bigger than himself. And in that moment something shifted. All around them, co-workers who had once stood in silence began stepping forward, clapping, smiling, nodding. It wasn't out of duty, it was out of respect. They had witnessed something real, something rare, and it changed them. Jackson turned to the team. "This isn't just about one person. This is about remembering who we are, what we stand for." He looked to Joe and the others. "I expect every manager in this company to know their people, not just their names, but their stories, their struggles, their worth." Then he walked toward the front, paused at the door, and turned one last time. "And thank you," he said quietly, "for reminding me what leadership is supposed to look like." The next morning, word had already spread. Ryan walked into the store just like always, Early, quiet, hoodie pulled up. But something was different. The air felt warmer. He didn't hear applause. He didn't need to. The nods were enough. The half smiles, the unspoken respect in every glance. Jackson was waiting for him in the back office. This time, not as a temp, not undercover, just present. "You don't have to stay long," Jackson said gently. "But there's one more thing I need to do." He reached into a folder and pulled out a badge, polished, silver, glinting under the overhead light. Ryan Cooper, assistant store manager. Ryan took it with both hands. He stared at it, then looked up, unsure. "I'm not sure I've earned this yet." Jackson smiled. "You didn't ask for a title. That's exactly why you deserve one." He leaned forward, voice sincere. "Your raise is effective immediately. Benefits, paid leave, bonus eligibility, all of it. But..." He paused. "That's not the real reward." Ryan tilted his head. Jackson continued. "Evans Mart is launching something called the Quiet Hero Fund. It starts here. Eventually, it'll expand to every store." Ryan didn't speak, but his eyes widened. "It's a support fund," Jackson explained, "for employees who go above and beyond. Not in sales, not in quarterly goals, but in kindness. In the moments that matter most. The ones no one sees, except the people who need it." Ryan looked back down at his badge, fingers tracing the lettering. "What about Adam?" he asked softly. "My brother." "Handled," Jackson replied. "I spoke with his school this morning. His tuition and books, covered." Ryan tried to say something, but all that came out was a breath, a quiet exhale that carried years of pressure, sacrifice, and silent prayers. From the hallway, a voice called out, "Mind if I say something?" It was Bill. He stepped into the office, arms crossed, eyes glassy. "Last year, my wife started dialysis," he said, voice cracking. "I didn't know how I was going to manage the schedule." He turned to Ryan. "This kid? Switched shifts with me every week, never said a word, never asked for anything." Jackson looked at Ryan. "You didn't mention that." Ryan shrugged slightly. "Didn't think it mattered." "It matters," Jackson said, standing tall. And then, like a quiet stream becoming a river, other voices joined in. A young cashier stepped in. "Ryan covered my gas money so I could make it to work." Another added, "He gave my son his old tablet so he could do homework during the lockdown." No cameras, no recognition, just stories finally finding space to be heard. "He wasn't trying to be anything special," Ryan said, voice quiet. "That's why you are," Jackson replied. The rest of the day moved like any other. Customers came, coffee brewed, aisles were cleaned, but something had changed. The store felt different. Smiles lasted longer, conversations deepened, kindness had taken root and people felt it. Before Jackson left, he passed through the front aisle and paused. Ryan was helping an elderly woman organize coupons. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't distracted. He was fully there. Jackson didn't interrupt. He just smiled quietly and left. And that was fine. Because this story had never been about him. It was about a quiet hero, one who never asked for recognition, but ended up lighting a path for others to follow. 2 weeks later, Store 3 looked the same. Same parking lot, same logo, same shelves. But inside, it was different. Not because of a memo, not because of policy, because of one man who reminded everyone what humanity in the workplace looks like. Behind the counter stood Ryan Cooper, name badge freshly pinned. Assistant store manager. Customers greeted him like always, and he smiled. Like always. But now, they knew. One woman placed a note on the counter. "You helped my father when he couldn't ask. We'll never forget." Ryan folded it and slipped it into his wallet. No attention needed, but being seen, that meant something. In the back office, Joe sat at his desk, thoughtful. He'd managed dozens of employees, but none like Ryan. He remembered Jackson's words, "I don't need a policy, I need honesty." Joe had changed too. He asked more now, not about sales, but about life. "How's your mom? Need a break? Holding up okay?" He realized leadership wasn't about being in charge. It was about showing up. Elsewhere, Adam sat in his campus library. He looked at his tuition portal. Balance $0.00. He texted his brother. "It's covered? Are you serious?" Ryan sent back a thumbs-up emoji. Adam didn't know the full story, but he knew enough to promise himself something. One day, he'd return that love. Somehow. As for Jackson, he returned to headquarters. He entered the boardroom, pulled up his laptop, and cleared the first hour of every meeting. From now on, he told his executives, we start with stories, not stats. One by one, regional managers began sharing their own stories. Cashiers staying late, drivers delivering groceries in storms, kindness surfacing like never before. Jackson launched a newsletter called The Quiet Report. No graphs, no sales figures, just stories of humanity. And every issue ended with the same quote. Sometimes, the ones who change a company aren't in the corner office. They're behind the counter, doing the right thing when no one's watching. One Saturday afternoon, a new sign appeared at Store 3. Plain white background, simple black lettering. Be the reason someone believes in people again. In honor of Ryan Cooper. No spotlight, no speeches, just truth. People stopped to read it, some smiled, some blinked away a tear. Ryan never asked for recognition, but what he gave, it came back, not as applause, but as action, as a ripple of kindness, and as a shift in culture, a reminder that dignity costs nothing but means everything. So what's the real lesson here? From Ryan's view, you don't need money to be generous, you just need to notice when someone's sinking. From Joe's view, people stay longer when they feel seen, and work harder when they feel human. From Jackson's view, leadership isn't about being loud, it's about listening when no one else does. And for the rest of us, maybe it's this. The smallest act of kindness might just leave the loudest legacy. If this story meant something to you, pass it along. Someone out there might need a little reminder that goodness is still alive, and that sometimes real heroes wear aprons and name badges. They just don't ask for a cape.